morning, beautiful people. Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz, LoveTalk. I am delighted this morning to have Steve Hamm as my guest. He's an author, journalist, and filmmaker, and a regular guy about town. He's one of the movers and shakers of Greater New Haven, and I'm delighted to talk to him about his book, The Pivot: Addressing Global Problems Through Local Action, and the project that he is working on, bringing citizens together to work on issues of climate change and what we can do at the local level. Am I right about that, Steve?
That's absolutely right. Thank you so much. And is that France behind you? Is that Paris? A scene in
Yes,
Paris?
it is.
Very nice. I've seen on Facebook that you love Paris.
I do. It's my spirit city.
Have you been back since COVID or no?
No, I haven't been back since COVID, and I have a bunch of friends who are there now, and they are happy to be there. So my plan is to get back sometime next year.
Oh, wonderful.
So
Yeah, well, it's just traveling has just been so awful.
it's a
and
nightmare.
difficult. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So how did you get interested in global climate change, and how does it work at the local level? Tell me about your story about that.
Yeah. Well, so, I've been a journalist and a documentary filmmaker for many decades. I won't say how many. And most of my writing has been focused either on information technology and business, kind of like the innovation economy, or on healthcare and medical science. I've written some for Yale Medicine and stuff like that. I've been kind of environmentally conscious, recycling, drive a Prius, this kind of thing, ride my bike. But at the beginning of COVID, I got involved in a group that was started up just then. And it was started up in response to COVID. And the group, I knew some of the people who were involved in it. I used to work at IBM, and some of their top research innovators I'd worked closely with, and they were involved in this. And their idea was that COVID should be a wake-up call, that we are not living in a sustainable way, we humans, and we're not living in balance with nature. And they formed this group with the idea of, can we bring together a global, collaborative group of volunteers who can really kind of cross boundaries and bring ideas together that could be useful in dealing with climate change. And the idea, we need to pivot. We're not sustainable. The clock is running out on our ability to really address climate change in a profound way. With climate change, after certain things happen, like some of the things that are happening now with, the glaciers melting and the polar ice cap melting and the tundra melting, once the global temperatures rise a certain amount, then that causes even more. It's a compounding thing. It's a mixed metaphor, but it's like a snowball going downhill.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a snowball, it's a fireball, right? And so we got to act, and we got to act now. And I got involved in that bunch as an embedded journalist. Like journalists go into like warfare and stuff like that with the troops. Well, this was me embedded with this bunch of scientists and social scientists. And I followed the course, and I thought it was a great journey they were on. And it wasn't just a story of what they were doing, but it was a story of a characteristic of humans, that in times of crisis, we have a tendency to pull together and forget our differences and try to make things better. Mm-hmm. So this is really a portrait of human nature and social behavior. Now, of course, during COVID, unfortunately, about half of the people in the United States decided, rather than pulling together to try to solve the problem, they would ignore it or scream or shout and things like that. So I think that's one of the reasons why we have had such a difficult time with COVID.
Were you surprised at COVID? Because, Harry and I talk about this all the time. In the movies, when there's when there's some kind of breakout, or the world is coming to an end, people rally together,
Yeah.
and then we rise to the occasion. But COVID showed us not so much.
Yeah. No, I think, we have a fractured society, and we have a society for the first time ever where people actually have they kind of choose their facts. There used to be a difference of kind of here are the facts. I have this philosophy or this philosophy. Now it's like somebody thinks they have their facts, somebody else has other facts. And of course that's not true. There is only one truth. There are, it's not, you can't pick your truth. Though of course people say I have my truth. What they mean is I have my opinion, I have my experience. But the fact of the matter is, facts are facts. I spent my life, a journalist's job is to discover the truth, to pursue the facts, and to present them.
So what did you learn? What did you learn in writing this book and working with this group of people? What did you learn on this journey about where we are and what's at stake? What really said, aha?
Well, it made me more aware of the real core issues about climate, because I was an environmentalist, but I didn't, and I knew that the climate scientists had been working, and there was a lot of data gathered, but it wasn't until I started reading some in-depth reports from the UN. There's an organization called IPCC, and we have actually some of the authors of it up here at Yale, Karen Sito and some other people. And the facts are there, and they put together a very powerful argument for this is what's happening, this is why it's happening, this is how we have to change, and this is how quickly we have to change. And I was sold on that. And and I think I mentioned before about the tundra, but there were some facts about what's going on with the tundra. As the tundra melts, it releases gases which heat up the atmosphere, which of course melts more tundra and melts more polar ice cap and melts more glaciers and things like that. So, and this is, sometimes people think, oh, global warming, climate change, this is something that's happening out in the globe somewhere. Not here. But it is happening here. It's already happening here. And we especially, people living on the sea, as we do, and people living in the paths of hurricanes, as we do. This place, our beloved town of New Haven, is particularly vulnerable. And in addition, in our town, we have a lot of people who don't have a lot of resources. And those people are the most vulnerable, because drought, heat, flooding, these things are coming. And we need to prepare for them, and we need to help our neighbors prepare for them. So
how do you give that message, Steve, and not scare the crap out of people? Because I get the sense that people can hear it, but then it frightens them and they get paralyzed with their fear about, well, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do with that information.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to scare people and paralyze them, and you don't want to, there's been a lot of this blaming thing, and I try to avoid that, because if you're pointing your finger of blame at somebody or an institution or an industry, it makes them turn away or repel you and stuff like that. So I think how we tell the story and how we engage with people is very important. I think it's really important to know that locally, that there are things that we can do. And those things, while they can't solve the global climate problem, they can ease the impact on us and our neighbors, on we as a group. And there are lots of practical things, and heat. Let's just take one. Here we are in this You're in the grip of a hot spell and a drought. You know, the Mill River runs by my house here. I'm out by the park. The Mill River is not running. There's no water coming over that dam into the Mill River.
Whoa.
It's just getting lower and lower and lower. And on my way, I almost every morning I either walk up East Rock or I ride my bike up East Rock. And when I go down Livingston Street, in the middle of this heat and a drought, with no water running in the Mill River, what's happening along Livingston Street? Those fancy houses? People are watering their lawns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so there's a very practical thing you can do about climate change. Stop watering your lawn, right? Number one, I think there are things that we kind of assume about life and kind of get used to. Oh, this is the way things is and the way they should be. So I think very gently, it's really good to point out to people, you know, a lawn may look like nature, but in fact, it is nature destroyed. You know, it's green. There are plants there. You know, there's all those little grass things. But in fact, it's, you know, with all the chemicals people put in their lawns, all the herbicides and pesticides, it's really kind of a chemical brew. Let's call it a chemical swamp. And it's not good for nature, and it's not good for humans, and you know, and sooner or later, we're going to get rid of these things called lawns.
Mm.
So
I see the movement afoot of people doing that.
Yeah. What are your trees? What are your plants? Especially your native plants? Don't use chemicals. Help the bees and the birds thrive, but get rid of that damn lawn.
So the group that you're working with, is this their mission? What is their mission?
Well,
what do they hope to do?
Okay. So first off, before we leave the other topic, all right, you got it too.
Thank you very much.
By the way, I want to tell you, I deliver that to your porch. And of course, I've seen your porch in Facebook posts, you know, videos, photographs. I think what you're doing there on your porch is magnificent.
Thank you.
You know, I think you love Paris. There's that whole tradition, a Parisian tradition of the salon.
Yes.
We're not talking about the beauty salon. We're talking about the thinking salon and the talking salon and the you know, bringing people together and having rich conversations. And you do that in a magnificent, natural way.
Well, thank you, Steve Hamm.
So I love that about you.
Thank you very much. Next time you're around, pop by.
I will. You know, I live very close to you. I live right over the hill.
Yes.
It's like we got Newhallville, then we got all those fancy houses up on the hill, right? Mm-hmm. And then we come down to East Rock. And there's some fancy houses here, but there are also people like me who live in apartments. So I ride my bike all around town. I ride over the hill, and I visit Doreen Brubaker. You know her. Mm-hmm. The native plant lady. Mm-hmm. It's Ab Brubaker. I'm sorry, I mispronounced her name. But she's fantastic, and I go over there, I buy plants, and I visit her because she is part of this group that I'm involved with, and this group is called Reimagining New Haven in the Era of Climate Change.
Yeah. And
basically, this book that I wrote and this group that I was with called Pivot Projects, a lot of the thinking at first was all about, what are these global thoughts that we should do? And then as time went on, people kept saying, well, you know, really the place that we have leverage, the humans and groups and neighbors have leverage, is in their own community. That's where we can have the most impact. So I started thinking about, you know, that subtitle came out of this, Addressing Global Problems Through Local Action. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking about, well, what can I do here? As a matter of fact, the first thing I did was I made a film, a documentary called A River Speaks.
Yes.
It was about the Mill River. And the idea was, hey, let's think about this river that runs past our house or near us, our local river, And let's walk along the river, like maybe from the beginning to the end, or one section of it, and kind of learn about it and become reacquainted with it and understand the impact that we have on it. You know, we love our rivers, but you know, traditionally we don't treat them very well. You know, in New Haven, our rivers, all this industry that we've had for 300 years, you know, the Industrial Revolution, man, we used our river for transportation, but also mainly for dumping stuff in.
Yeah.
Right? So the Mill River is one of the most abused rivers in America. But, so you got to learn about it. You got to think about it. So I made that film as kind of an example of learning about the complex relationship between humans and nature. And what we.
So do you feel like we're getting closer? Do you feel like that relationship is coming to some real understanding that we are interconnected? Or do you think people are still disconnected from nature and the practicalities of that?
I think we're still disconnected. I mean, there are some programs, you know, New Haven Public Schools have had a bunch of interesting, innovative curricula around the river and around the Sound. Sound School, obviously, but some of the other schools, Wilbercross, Martinez School, the sixth
Common
grade.
Ground,
Yeah,
high school.
yeah, oh yes, absolutely. So there's an effort to really help people understand the relationship between humans and nature. And I think in our town more than most. But it has a long way to go. I mean, even as simple as this, what can you use as a measure? Look at the trash around our town. You can't appreciate nature and throw trash. That's a signal that you don't. Whoever throws the trash doesn't understand, doesn't appreciate nature. And I think you see way too much of it. You know, I'm in East Rock here. So much people back up the car and throw the trash in the woods. You know,
Ooh.
So I think that's a signal that people don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, our group started a couple months ago with the idea that while there are lots of environmental groups within government and also in, you know, nonprofits and stuff, and there's lots of climate change attention, there's not a lot of attention to the local impacts of climate change. And that's what we have to raise awareness about, because that's what we can really do something about, right? So and by do something, it's either adapt to it, you know, or mitigate it, make the impact less. We have, and I'll tell you the impacts. I don't want to scare you, Babz.
Mm. Well, listen, this is what I know. All politics are local, so
yeah.
All climate change is local.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it globally, you're not gonna act on it.
Yes.
I don't think.
That's right. You just think, oh, that's too big and complex. That's for government to deal with.
Yes.
But, all right. So locally, we have the sea levels are rising, and they're expected to rise by 20 inches by 2050. And that makes 20 inches may not sound like much, but
that's a lot.
Almost 2 feet, and a lot of places that are right on the shore. If you combine that with storms, surges, and hurricanes, and you know, if you have like a trifecta, sea level rise, in comes a big hurricane with a tide, and the tides are high, and then you got a bunch of rain upstate coming down, you have major flooding, and major flooding in the Annex, major flooding in Morse Cove, major flooding in Fairhaven, and major flooding in Hill South. Mm-hmm. And also major flooding in Long Wharf. But we don't have people living there, but
not yet.
All these other places people live. And so the water is thing one, you know. Another aspect of water is like with the drought, shortages of water. You know, do you have to cut back on what, you know, there will be cutting back on watering lawns, and eventually there may be other cutbacks. I mean, you know, flushing toilets. Out in California, we live there, my wife and I live there, my son, we lived there for 10 years. There are droughts out there where all sorts of things that we take for granted, you don't take for granted anymore. Flushing your toilet. So there are a lot of things that will happen with shortage of water. And then there's the heat. And, heat, a lot of, middle class and wealthy people have a lot of air conditioning. They can afford it. It's very expensive to buy these machines and to run them. A lot of people cannot afford it. They suffer. And as we get a higher average heat, but also more high heat days, there's going to be more suffering. And it's not just suffering, it's suffering for the heat. It affects your ability to work and think, sleep, right? Mm-hmm. And then for elderly and infants, the most vulnerable, it can actually have very unhealthy effects, like up to and including death. So these are really profound impacts. One more thing. What is New Haven known for? Since 1638. Immigrants. It's a place where immigrants come to. And immigrants' climate change is going to create a lot of climate refugees. So we have to be aware and that this is going to happen and that we'll have people who want to come here. And New Haven is a welcoming place to the immigrant. We have IRIS, we have other programs. There's going to be more pressure, there's going to be more people. So we have to anticipate this and be prepared for it. So we have to be prepared for things. We have to see the future, the far future, but also see it's happening now. Prepare now, start acting now. Now heat. We have this, one of the most beautiful things about dealing with heat is trees. The canopy of trees protects us. Some of these cities like New York, some of these places with, they have trees, not nearly as much trees. It's more concrete, it's steel, all this kind of stuff. They're 2-3 degrees hotter than we are, right? A city neighborhood, I'm sure, I haven't seen the data, but I'm sure that some of our treed suburbs, the treed neighborhoods, like East Rock, where I live, we have all these huge trees around us.
I do too.
I think Newhallville is
lots of trees.
Newhallville is another well-treed area. Parts of Dixwell are not so good, and there are other neighborhoods. I think parts of Fairhaven don't have enough trees. But so that whole thing that URI does of the tree planting, they've planted 10,000 trees in however many years they've been operating. Well, we have to accelerate that. Some of the things, we already have these wonderful programs. We have to accelerate them. How do we do that? So these are some of the questions. So our group wants to raise awareness, engage, bring more and more people of all types together to understand and to work on this problem, and then to try to catalyze some changes. So we're organizing an event. We call it Climathon. And that's borrowed from, there's an international group that comes out of Europe called Climate Kicks. And they have this global climathon thing where they help organize and they have information and they share ideas and stuff. So we're going to have a climathon, hopefully October 30th. We want to have it, we want to have it in a neighborhood, very much say this is a neighborhood thing, right? We have to pick one, and we're thinking about Fairhaven, we're thinking about Martinez School, because it's right there, by the water, by that old power plant, all the symbols and all the realities of our vulnerability are right there at Martinez School. So we want to have a thing where the first part, raising awareness, information from experts. Second part, listening to the people, right? Third part, workshops. What are a handful of things that we think we can actually do? And are there new ideas or new energies we can bring to it? And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. the group is about raising awareness, engaging and catalyzing, not replicating what somebody else is doing. So if we have an idea, we say, New Haven Climate Movement, that's that wonderful youth group, right? If there's something, they're going to be involved with us in this climathon. Well, is there something that comes out of the climathon that they want to take and run with, right? Or New Haven has the Climate Emergency Task Force, which was formed a couple of years ago, but really hasn't done much. Well, can we catalyze or rejuvenate that group or get them going on something? Can we hand something off to them? So these are the kind of things we want to do. And it's a wonderful group. It's all volunteers. There's no staff. We have through the Arts Council, we have nonprofit status. It's there, and of course you're on the board of the Arts Council. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
But that's a wonderful thing. I got to tell you, the Arts Council is wonderful in multiple dimensions. But that whole program of offering little groups, little nonprofit groups, the opportunity to piggyback on the 501c3 that they have, that you guys have, otherwise it's almost impossible for groups to get going. But with that vehicle that the Arts Council has, it is just an innovation factory, social innovation factory that they create for the city. So we have that status, and we're trying to raise some money. If you know any rich people who are particularly interested, you know everybody. So you probably know a few rich people who are interested in climate. Please
I like that.
send them my way or introduce me to them.
All right. So tell me, what is the takeaway for this book? And who is this book really for? Is this can I read this and really get a sense that I don't have to be a climate change scientist to understand it? Is this an everyman's kind of book?
Is it an everyman's kind of book? I think it's not written for scientists or policymakers, though I think it was published by Columbia University Press. It's kind of a serious and it's science-backed kind of thing, but it's really a story of a journey of a group of people, and I have in the book it kind of tells the story chronologically of how the people got together, how they struggled, all this kind of stuff. It has profiles of about 10 people. All sorts of people of all kinds.
Yeah, you've got I saw the woman who's a Greek archaeologist.
Yes. We got a Greek archaeologist. We have a Vietnamese salmon grower who lives in Sweden. We have, it's a bunch of interesting people from around the world. We've got a wonderful guy. One of my favorite people in the group is a guy named Gamale Sabande. And he's from, is it Mozambique? Anyway, he lives in South Africa, and he is a technical worker for the UN. And his specialty is going into failed states in Africa and helping them get back on their feet. So a wonderful, he's a guy who, as a child,
Zimbabwean technical advisor.
That's right, Zimbabwe. Yeah. So I got Mozambique and Zimbabwe confused. So he, as a child, herded livestock in a place where there were wild cats. So he appreciated nature and the risks and how we can live in harmony with nature on a very profound way. And he's just a wonderful guy who practices a scientific domain called biomimicry. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Biomimicry is the idea that by studying nature and how nature solves problems, we can apply some of those techniques to are human social problems. And he brought in a guy recently to the group, one of his colleagues from South Africa, who said that he was studying wild dogs, South African wild dogs, and how they communicate with each other about what they're going to do next. And he said, in the pack, there is an alpha dog, but the rest of the members of the group also have a say. And they vote. They actually vote by coughing. And I don't know if you ever had a dog, but sometimes if a dog wants to go outside, it kind of makes a coughing sound by the door. Mm. This is from wild dog behavior. And he said that that they're applying the lessons they've learned about group communication and group dynamics from wild dogs and applying them to the UN Security Council. The UN, so Wild Dogs UN Security Council. And they said, in the Security Council, of course, there are a few countries that have the veto. So they're the alpha dogs. But then there are these other countries that come through, but they do have an impact. If you can avoid the veto, if you have can build a consensus through this kind of coughing thing, the wild dogs say, vote when it's time to move to another spot, basically. Well, in UN Security Council, it's time to move to another idea, right? So that's biomimicry. So we can learn from nature, and we can, and you don't get all dogmatic about it, so it's got to be exactly the way it runs in nature. Or you don't say nature is perfect, because nature can be pretty harsh, right? Mm-hmm. But you say that left to a natural state, things reach a stasis, an accommodation, a balance, right? They're thrown into imbalance by storms and by humans, right? These are the main things, or by disease, So we can learn from nature, and I think things like people take lessons from the mangroves, all down southern United States, the Gulf. These mangroves are the things that there's a lot of erosion along the coast from tides and surf and from human boats and stuff like this. But the mangroves have proven to be really powerful kind of holders. They hold the earth together. They like that. So you look at the mangroves and you see, what could we do around here physically to help with our coasts? And I'll give you an example. Out at Sound School, they have a program which is called oyster reef balls. Now, what they do is cast in concrete these structures that are ball-shaped, and they have like holes in them, right? And the idea is that if you put these out in the shallows of the Sound, they will do a bunch of things. First off, they will take the force of storms and of waves so that there's less erosion, right? The other thing they'll do is they create a habitat first for oysters, because they do plant oysters there, and then for every other kind of living thing, animal and vegetable. So they have those out there off City Point, Sound School, and they could, if we decided, we could do that, replicate that all along the coast, and it would be healthier for the Sound. It would help our shoreline to a certain extent. It doesn't stop sea level rise, but it slows erosion. Mm. So those reef balls are like the mangrove, right? They're holding it together.
Holding it together. Well, I'm so happy that you have this book. I believe climate change is local. It starts local. And I'm glad that you're bringing that to us so that we can understand how we can, at the local level, do something about how to prepare ourselves here. for
Yeah.
what is going to be real is coming our way, as you said, a
Yeah.
fireball.
So yeah, fireball rolling downhill. So I want to reach out to anybody who's listening, watching now, or will watch this later when it's posted up on the independent website. We want people. We want, people who are concerned, people who are interested, people who want to explore.
How do people find you?
Well, they go to our website, which is reimaginingnewhaven.org.
Okay.
And from there, you can find out about the organization, and you can find my email. But I'll also tell you it's Steve Hamm, STEVEHAMM 31 @gmail.com. And get involved in our group. We say we have 3 pillars: science and expertise, community, and arts and artists. That those are the pillars of creating a better society. And when we talk about reimagining New Haven, it's not just around climate change. Our city has tremendous energy, tremendous resources, people resources, ideas, wonderful relationships. And if we can bring it together and people can come together and reimagine the city, not just around climate change, but making a more resilient city, a more equitable city, a more just place, a place that is where life can be better for more people, and not such a struggle for so many people. That's the goal of a city, I think, right? Sometimes cities just kind of drift along, right? Well, we have so many smart, energetic, interesting people in our town. We can't drift along. We got to take this. We got to grab this, right? New Haven is not a
drifting town. New Haven is really an incubator for good things that could go on in the city. So
absolutely.
Steve, I've enjoyed talking to you this morning. I appreciate you bringing your book and getting us all excited about addressing global problems through local action. I like that.
Wonderful. I'll come visit you on your porch. Do I have to arrange it, or do I just drop by some evening?
You just drop by some evening, bring some libations or whatever.
I will.
Hang out and be.
I think you like bourbon, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Western Pennsylvania, shot and beer town, Pittsburgh.
Oh, all right.
So I'll have to bring some bourbon for you.
All right. I'll take it. Thank you so much, Steve Hamm.
Very good. Always.
All right. Be cool out here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harry Droz, for everything. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. I have Gary Gates on from the Newhallville Corporation to talk about the 22 years of the basketball league that they've been doing. So that'll be a good conversation. So I'll see y'all tomorrow. Thank you, Steve Hamm. Everybody, The Pivot, addressing global problems through local action. All right, Harry, play us out.